Night, forest. You're in a tent, a thin layer of fabric separating you from the darkness. Around you is wolf territory, maybe bear territory. And somewhere else in the world, right now, another person is sleeping in an identical thin tent in the middle of lion territory. You're asleep, completely defenseless. You have no claws, no fangs, no speed to outrun a predator, and no strength to win a fight against one. While you sleep, your eyes are closed, your hearing is dulled, your reaction time is nearly zero. By every biological measure, you are the perfect prey. Soft, warm, motionless, easy pickings. And yet, every night, thousands of people fall asleep in tents, sleeping bags, or simply under the open sky, in forests full of predators fully capable of killing a human in a matter of seconds. And almost all of them wake up the next morning, alive, unharmed, as if predators simply don't notice the easy prey lying right under their noses. That's the mystery. A predator evolutionarily wired to find the weak, the wounded, the motionless, suddenly ignores a creature that literally cannot defend itself. This isn't a one-night coincidence. It happens again and again in different countries, on different continents, with different predator species. Why? This isn't a question with one simple answer. It's a mystery with several layers. Each layer reveals something unexpected about who we really are. The first layer is fear, not your fear of the forest, the predator's fear of you. Sounds strange, right? A lion afraid of a human? A bear afraid of a human? But that's exactly what research shows, and we'll get into where this fear comes from. The second layer is the signals you give off without even realizing it. Smell, silhouette. How you look and smell to an animal that has spent centuries learning to recognize its prey at a glance. The third layer is what happens inside you while you sleep. It turns out your brain doesn't shut down completely. Part of it stays on guard, a result of millions of years of selection. And the fourth layer is a truth we can't avoid. The rule doesn't always hold. Sometimes predators do attack. And the reasons behind these rare cases will tell us just as much as the reasons behind why it usually doesn't happen. We'll go through each layer one by one, from studies where massive predators panicked and abandoned their prey at the sound of a human voice, to ancient sleep defense mechanisms that still work inside your body every single night. By the end of this video, you'll look at human beings, at yourself, completely differently. Not as a weak, defenseless creature, but as something nature has learned to fear. Let's go. So why would a predator that could, in theory, easily kill a sleeping human choose to keep its distance instead? The answer starts with the fact that humans are actually one of the most frightening predators this planet has ever seen, even without claws, fangs, speed, or strength. Let's look at the facts. In 2019, researchers at the University of California, Santa Cruz ran an experiment with mountain lions. The researchers set up hidden speakers near places where mountain lions hunted and played different sounds through them. Sometimes it was the sounds of other animals, frogs, deer, and sometimes an ordinary human voice, just calm conversation. The results surprised even the scientists themselves. When they heard animal sounds, the mountain lions behaved normally. But the moment a human voice played, the mountain lions bolted. They abandoned their prey. They fled. And they fled nearly 9 times more often and more quickly than they did from the sounds of any other animal, including other predators. A large, powerful predator, capable of killing a human in seconds, fled in panic from the mere sound of a human voice. And this isn't an isolated case. A similar pattern shows up all over the world. In South Africa's Kruger National Park, lions, apex predators with no natural enemies, avoid areas where humans frequently appear, even when those humans are unarmed and pose no direct threat. In India, tigers, capable of knocking down a water buffalo with a single strike of a paw, tend to steer clear of human trails. In the Amazon, jaguars at Saoring, among the strongest predators on the continent, show the same pronounced caution around people. Different predators, different continents, different prey, different strength, different behavior. But the same reaction to humans: avoidance. Why does this happen? Fear of humans isn't a coincidence or an accident. It's the result of thousands of generations of natural selection. Think about it. For a very long time, predators that attacked humans were more likely to die themselves. Humans defended themselves in groups, used fire, invented weapons, banded together against threats. A predator that took the risk of attacking often didn't survive long enough to pass on its genes. Cautious predators, on the other hand, the ones that preferred to keep their distance from humans, survived, and they passed that caution on to their offspring. So, generation after generation, fear of humans became embedded in the instincts of wild animals. This isn't something each predator has to learn fresh in its own lifetime. It's built in much deeper. A predator may never personally encounter a human in its entire life, but caution toward us is already built into it from birth, an echo of every encounter its ancestors had long before it was ever born. That's why a lion in Kruger or a mountain lion in the forests of California, upon seeing or hearing a human, more often chooses retreat over attack. Not because it's afraid of you specifically, but because the species you belong to has been too dangerous an opponent for too long to risk it. This is the first, and perhaps the most important, layer of the answer to our mystery. But there are other signals a predator reads before it even decides whether to attack. And that's next. So, fear of humans runs deep in predators' instincts. But that's not the whole story. Even if a predator isn't afraid, there are other reasons it simply doesn't register a sleeping human as prey. Let's start with smell. Predators don't hunt just anything. Each species has calibrated itself over millions of years to a specific type of prey. A wolf recognizes the scent of a deer. A lion recognizes the scent of a zebra or an antelope. It's a built-in template shaped over generations. Now think about how a human smells from a predator's point of view. Synthetic sleeping bag fabric, traces of shampoo and soap, food smells from a backpack, deodorant, laundry detergent on clothing, even just plastic and rubber gear. To a predator, this is a combination of smells that doesn't match any familiar prey template. You don't smell like an animal. You smell like something unfamiliar, foreign, hard to categorize. And the unfamiliar is a risk. Most predators are wired to avoid risk when there's a simpler, more understandable option nearby. If deer or wild boar are roaming the same forest, why would a predator waste energy and take a risk on a strange-smelling creature? Now let's add another factor, fire. Most wild animals have an innate, instinctive fear of fire. This isn't learned behavior, and it's built into their instincts. Because for millions of years, fire has meant destruction, danger, the need to flee. Even a small campfire or smoldering embers near a tent act as a signal. This is territory marked by something worth avoiding. And finally, posture and silhouette. Humans are the only large land animal that consistently moves upright on two legs. To the animal world, this is unusual and inherently unsettling. A vertical silhouette against the landscape is read by many predators, not as the shape of easy prey, but as a potential threat. Similar to how the stance of a gorilla or a bear rearing up on its hind legs during a defensive moment is perceived. Most prey in nature is low, horizontal, four-legged. Deer, boar, antelope, all of them are lower, more compact. A tall, upright silhouette breaks that familiar pattern. It doesn't fit the category of food. It looks more like something better left alone. Put it all together, an unfamiliar scent, instinctive wariness around fire, an unusual upright silhouette. Even if a predator is hungry, even if it's physically capable of attacking, all these signals add up to the same conclusion: too unfamiliar, too risky. This doesn't mean a predator consciously reasons and weighs risks the way a human would. It happens at the instinctive level, but the result is the same. A predator more often chooses to move on rather than move closer. But signals from the outside are only half the picture. While you sleep, something is also happening inside you. Your own body and brain aren't nearly as helpless as they seem at first glance. And that's the next layer of our mystery. So, from the outside, a predator picks up signals that you're not exactly simple, obvious prey. But what's happening inside you while you sleep? It turns out your sleep isn't nearly as defenseless as it seems. For a long time, sleep was thought of as a state of complete shutdown. But that's not true. The brain moves through different stages during sleep, from deep sleep to light sleep. During the lighter stages, the brain remains partially sensitive to outside stimuli, especially unusual sounds. This is called the sentinel function of sleep. Part of your brain keeps monitoring your surroundings. Familiar, everyday sounds, wind, rustling leaves, get filtered out by the brain without interrupting your sleep. But an unusual sound, a branch snapping, a quiet growl, footsteps that don't fit the usual pattern, can instantly pull you out of sleep. This isn't a random quirk, it's the result of a very long process of selection. Picture people who used to sleep so deeply that they stopped responding to any danger signals around them. They were more vulnerable. Meanwhile, those whose brains kept the ability to pick up on warning signs during sleep were more likely to wake up in time, react, escape. Over time, this trait, sleep that's restorative but still alert, became embedded and got passed down. That's why today when you sleep in a tent, your brain isn't fully switched off. It's running in a kind of background monitoring mode. This is one reason why any predator that gets too close and makes a careless sound risks waking you up. And a person who suddenly wakes up, shouts, and starts moving abruptly is no longer the easy, motionless target it might have seemed to be. But there's another defense mechanism that's often underestimated: the group factor. Think about how sleeping outdoors usually happens. People rarely sleep alone out there. It's usually family, friends, a group on a camping trip, several tents clustered together, several people in one camp. And this matters enormously for how a predator reads the situation. Predators in the wild almost always prefer to hunt isolated, solitary individuals. An animal that strayed from the herd, a lone wounded animal, a straggling young one. These are the classic targets. A group, even a sleeping group, is read completely differently. Too many potential sources of noise, too many unpredictable reactions, too high a risk that attacking one member wakes up the rest, turning what looked like easy prey into several shouting, flailing creatures. This works even at a purely instinctive level, without any conscious reasoning on the animal's part. A lone, isolated target, a potentially safe option. A group, a risk better avoided. So while you're asleep in a tent alongside friends or family, you're not nearly as vulnerable as it might seem. On one hand, your brain keeps partially monitoring your surroundings even while you sleep. On the other, being near other people makes you less attractive as a target. Put this together with predators' built-in fear of humans and the unfamiliar signals you give off, and the picture starts coming together. Each layer on its own lowers the chances of an attack. Together, they create something like an invisible protective barrier. But we need to be honest here. This barrier isn't absolute. Sometimes it fails. And that's what we'll look at next. So we've covered why predators usually don't attack sleeping humans. Fear, unfamiliar signals, the sentinel function of sleep, the group factor. But it would be dishonest to say this rule holds every single time. Sometimes it breaks down, and the reasons behind these rare cases actually confirm everything we've covered so far, rather than contradicting it. Take the two most famous cases in history. The first is the Tsavo lions in Kenya in 1898. Two lions attacked railway workers over the course of several months. The case became famous precisely because it was the exception, not the rule. Later, when scientists examined the lions' remains, they found serious damage to their teeth and jaws. Injuries that made hunting normal prey like antelope or zebra extremely painful and difficult. The lions couldn't hunt effectively in the usual way. Humans, unlike fast wild animals, turned out to be a more accessible alternative. The second case is the Champawat tigress in the Champawat district of India in the early 20th century. She was responsible for numerous attacks on people over several years. And again, when the tigress was eventually examined, researchers found damaged teeth, broken canines. That prevented her from killing normal prey quickly and cleanly. Hunting large wild animals requires a powerful, precise bite. Without one, the tigress physically couldn't hunt the way healthy tigers do. In both cases, the cause was the same. Something was broken. An injury, a disability, a loss of the ability to hunt in the usual way. A healthy predator with intact teeth and full strength will almost always choose familiar, understandable prey and avoid humans. But a predator that physically can't hunt the way it used to is forced to look for a more accessible target. And a human who doesn't run as fast as an antelope suddenly becomes that accessible option. Similar logic applies to other rare attack cases: starvation, old age, or early habituation to human presence. All of these factors break down that same instinctive barrier of caution we talked about earlier. In other words, the rule predators avoid humans isn't absolute, but the exceptions to it aren't random. They happen precisely when the natural defense mechanisms we've discussed stop working, because of physical or circumstantial problems affecting the predator itself. Now let's zoom out. The fact that nearly every large predator on the planet instinctively avoids humans doesn't just affect individual nights spent in a tent, it reshapes entire ecosystems. Take the mountain lions in California, the same ones that drop their prey at the sound of a human voice. Their avoidance of human presence means that areas near people become less attractive hunting grounds for mountain lions. As a result, more deer live and reproduce undisturbed in these zones than would otherwise be the case. More deer means more pressure on vegetation, changes in forest composition, and effects on other species that depend on that same vegetation. You end up with an interesting chain. The fear one species has of another quietly reshapes entire food chains and landscapes, across tens and even hundreds of kilometers around human presence. It's a massive, invisible effect that starts with one simple thing: how the wild world perceives humans. Not as a weak, defenseless creature, but as something worth avoiding, even if the individual wild animal has never personally seen a human up close. Let's go back to where we started. Night, a tent, you're asleep. A thin layer of fabric is the only boundary between you and a forest full of predators. It's nearby. It can sense you, hear you, maybe even see you. And it doesn't come inside. Not because it can't, because it knows better.